Dr. Elena Vasquez watched her husband poison her coffee for the third morning in a row. She had been pretending to drink it, dumping it in the sink when he left for work. But today she decided to confront the man she had loved for 8 years. The realization had come slowly, like pieces of a horrifying puzzle clicking into place. The mysterious stomach problems that started 6 months ago. The way Marcus always insisted on making her morning coffee, claiming it was his way of showing love. The strange bitter aftertaste she had attributed to a new brand of beans. But yesterday, she had seen him in their kitchen at 5 a.m. measuring white powder from a small vial into her favorite mug. Elena was a forensic psychologist who specialized in studying criminal behavior patterns, yet she had failed to recognize the signs in her own home. The irony was devastating. She spent her days analyzing how predators manipulated their victims, how they created environments of control and dependency, how they systematically broke down their target's sense of reality. Now she was living it. Marcus walked into their kitchen with his usual morning smile, the same expression that had charmed her when they met in graduate school. He was finishing his PhD in chemistry while she pursued her doctorate in psychology. They had been the perfect academic couple, supporting each other's research, building a life together based on intellectual compatibility and shared ambitions. "Good morning, beautiful. Your coffee is ready." Marcus handed her the mug with both hands, a gesture that had once felt romantic, but now seemed like a ceremony of betrayal. Elena accepted the coffee, inhaling its aroma while watching Marcus's face for any sign of guilt or anxiety. He appeared completely normal, humming softly as he prepared his own breakfast, checking his phone for messages from his research lab. "Marcus, what's in my coffee?" she asked quietly. He looked up with apparent confusion. "What do you mean?" "It's the same blend we always drink." Elena set the mug down on the counter without taking a sip. "I saw you adding something to it yesterday morning." A white powder from a small glass vial. Marcus paused in buttering his toast, his expression shifting slightly. Not to guilt or panic, but to something Elena recognized from her work with psychopaths, a calculating coolness that appeared when they realized their manipulation had been discovered. "Elena, that's a very serious accusation. Are you feeling all right? Maybe you should consider taking a break from work. You've been under a lot of stress with the Morrison case." The Morrison case. Elena had been consulting on a murder investigation where the victim had been slowly poisoned by her partner over several months. The parallels to her own situation were now impossible to ignore. "Don't gaslight me, Marcus. I know what I saw." Marcus sat down across from her at their kitchen table, his demeanor shifting to concerned husband mode. "Honey, I'm worried about you. These paranoid thoughts, the accusations, this isn't like you. Maybe you should talk to someone." Elena felt a chill as she recognized the technique. He was using her own professional knowledge against her, suggesting that her perfectly rational observations were symptoms of mental illness. It was a classic manipulation tactic, and she had seen it destroy countless victims who began to doubt their own perceptions. "Show me the vial," she said. "What vial?" The one you were using to poison my coffee. Marcus leaned back in his chair, and Elena saw his mask slip completely. The concerned husband expression disappeared, replaced by something cold and analytical. She realized this wasn't a recent development. He had been studying her, experimenting on her for months. You know, Elena, for someone who claims to understand criminal psychology, you're remarkably naive about the people closest to you. Marcus's voice had changed, becoming more clinical, like he was discussing a research subject rather than his wife. Why? The question escaped as a whisper. Why do you think? You're the perfect test subject. Intelligent, observant, professionally trained to recognize manipulation, and yet completely vulnerable in your own home. Marcus smiled, but it was nothing like the expression she had fallen in love with. I've been documenting how long it takes to break down someone with your specific psychological profile. Elena felt the room spinning as the full scope of his betrayal became clear. This wasn't a crime of passion or a sudden mental break. This was a deliberate, long-term psychological experiment with her as the unwitting subject. How long have you been planning this? Since we got married. Maybe before. Marcus pulled out a tablet from his briefcase and showed her spreadsheets tracking her physical symptoms, emotional responses, and behavioral changes over the past 6 months. You've been remarkably consistent. The isolation phase worked exactly as predicted. Isolation phase. Elena realized that her increasing withdrawal from friends and colleagues hadn't been due to work stress, as she had believed. Marcus had been systematically undermining her social connections, suggesting that her friends were jealous of their relationship, that her colleagues were trying to sabotage her career, that her family didn't really understand her. You made me think everyone was against me. Not against you, just less important than our relationship. I needed you to depend on me completely before moving to the next stage. Marcus closed the tablet and looked at her with the detached interest of a scientist observing lab results. But you figured it out too early. That's disappointing. Most subjects don't recognize the pattern until stage 3. Subjects? How many other women have you done this to? Marcus didn't answer directly, but Elena saw something flicker in his eyes that told her she wasn't his first victim. She thought about the woman before her, the one who had supposedly moved away suddenly without leaving a forwarding address. The woman Marcus rarely mentioned, but whose pictures he had kept in a box in their closet. Elena stood up slowly, her mind racing through everything she knew about psychological manipulation and predatory behavior. Marcus was treating her like a case study, documenting the systematic destruction of her identity and autonomy. But he had made one crucial mistake. He had chosen a victim who understood exactly what he was doing. What stage 2, Marcus? He smiled again, and Elena saw genuine excitement in his expression. Stage 2 is where things get really interesting. That's when we start breaking down your sense of reality completely. Elena looked at her husband across their breakfast table and realized she was married to a monster who saw her not as a person, but as an experiment. The man she had trusted with her deepest fears and vulnerabilities had been systematically using that information to destroy her from the inside out. She needed to get out of the house, but she also needed evidence of what he was doing. If Marcus had done this before, if there were other victims, she had a professional and moral obligation to stop him. Elena picked up her coffee mug and took a small sip, maintaining eye contact with Marcus as she did it. His eyes widened with surprise and what looked like professional admiration. "Interesting choice," he said. "Most people would run." "I'm not most people," Elena replied, tasting the bitter chemical on her tongue and knowing she had just made a decision that would either save future victims or destroy her completely. Elena had been documenting Marcus's behavior for 2 weeks, pretending to succumb to his psychological manipulation while secretly recording their conversations and photographing evidence. The chemical he was using was a mild hallucinogen that caused confusion and memory problems, enough to make her doubt her own perceptions without causing obvious physical damage. She had been taking just enough to maintain the illusion that his experiment was working, while using her forensic training to build a case against him. But Marcus was getting suspicious. He had started varying the timing of the doses, watching her more carefully, asking probing questions about her daily activities. This morning, he introduced something new to their routine. "Elena, I've been thinking about your mental health concerns. I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Reeves for this afternoon." Marcus handed her a business card for a psychiatrist she had never heard of. "I'm worried about your paranoid episodes and memory problems." Elena felt her blood run cold. Dr. Reeves was part of Marcus's plan, probably another collaborator in whatever network of predators he was connected to. She had seen this pattern in her casework. Abusive partners who used corrupt medical professionals to validate their gaslighting, to provide official documentation that their victims were mentally unstable. "I don't need a psychiatrist, Marcus. I need you to stop poisoning me." Marcus sighed with exaggerated patience. "Elena, this is exactly what I'm talking about. These delusions are getting worse. Yesterday you accused me of moving your car keys, and now you're back to this poisoning fantasy." He was right about the car keys. She had spent 20 minutes looking for them before finding them in her purse, where they belonged. But Elena knew it wasn't her memory failing. Marcus had access to her purse, her car, her entire life. He could easily plant and remove items to make her question her own mental state. "Show me your research notes," she said. "The ones you've been keeping about my behavior." "What research notes?" "Elena, you're scaring me. Maybe we should go to the hospital instead of waiting for the appointment." Marcus pulled out his phone as if to call an ambulance, but Elena noticed the screen showed a text conversation with someone named Dr. R. The visible message read, "Subject showing increased resistance. May need immediate intervention." Elena felt the walls closing in around her. Marcus wasn't just conducting an experiment. He was part of a larger network, probably involving corrupt medical professionals who would help him have her committed or declared mentally incompetent. Once she was institutionalized, who would believe her claims about being poisoned and manipulated? "I'm not going anywhere with you," Elena said, backing toward the kitchen door. "Elena, please, I love you. I'm trying to help you get better. Marcus's voice carried just the right note of concerned desperation, the kind that would convince emergency responders that he was a devoted husband dealing with a mentally ill wife. Elena realized she had underestimated the sophistication of his operation. This wasn't just one man conducting a private experiment. It was an organized system designed to discredit and control women, probably operating for years without detection. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Don't trust Dr. Reeves. Get out now." Elena stared at the message, wondering who could have sent it. Marcus was watching her face, and she saw his expression shift as he realized someone else was involved. "Who's texting you?" he asked, his voice losing its false concern. "No one, just work." Marcus held out his hand. "Let me see the phone." "No." They stared at each other across the kitchen, and Elena saw Marcus calculating his next move. He was losing control of the experiment, and she could see him deciding whether to abandon the subtle approach in favor of something more direct. Another text arrived. "Lisa Chen. I was his subject before you. Basement of 1247 Oak Street. Evidence is there." Elena's heart stopped. Lisa Chen was the previous girlfriend, the one who had supposedly moved away. She wasn't missing, she was dead. And her body was probably hidden in a basement somewhere, along with evidence of Marcus's crimes. Marcus lunged for her phone, but Elena was faster. She ran from the kitchen toward the front door, but Marcus caught her in the hallway. They struggled for the device, and Elena managed to hit the emergency call button before he wrestled it away from her. 911. What's your emergency? My husband is trying to poison me, and I think he killed his previous girlfriend, Elena shouted before Marcus covered her mouth. Marcus grabbed the phone. I'm sorry, my wife is having a psychiatric emergency. She's been having delusions and paranoid episodes. We don't need assistance. Sir, we need to speak with your wife directly. Marcus looked at Elena with pure hatred, all pretense of love and concern completely gone. She's not in a condition to speak rationally right now. I'm taking her to the hospital myself. Elena bit down on Marcus's hand as hard as she could, causing him to release her. Don't listen to him. He's been poisoning my coffee for months. Check 1247 Oak Street. The 911 operator's voice became more alert. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? Yes. He's part of a network that... Marcus struck her across the face, sending her stumbling backward. Elena tasted blood and realized the psychological phase of his experiment was over. Now he was moving to direct violence. Sir, we're dispatching units to your location. Do not leave the premises. Marcus looked at Elena with the cold calculation she now recognized as his true nature. You've ruined everything. Do you have any idea how much work you've destroyed? How many women have you killed? Not killed, studied. Most of them adapted to the conditioning beautifully. They learned to accept their new reality, to depend completely on their handlers, to stop questioning what they were told. Marcus wiped blood from his hand where she had bitten him. You're too professionally trained. Too aware of the patterns. Elena realized that Marcus and his network weren't just killing women. They were creating a psychological programming system designed to produce compliant victims. The women who survived were probably being trafficked or used in other ways, their identities completely erased through systematic psychological destruction. Lisa Chun fought back too, didn't she? Marcus smiled, but it was empty of warmth or humanity. Lisa made it all the way to stage 3 before she became problematic. You're failing much earlier in the process. Sirens were approaching, but Elena could see Marcus calculating whether he had time to silence her permanently before police arrived. She backed toward the front door, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether she lived to expose his network or became another victim in his research files. Stage 3, she said, trying to keep him talking. What happens in stage 3? Marcus checked his watch, listening to the sirens getting closer. Stage 3 is when we harvest the final product. When the subject's original personality is completely erased and replaced with something more useful. Elena felt sick as she understood. Marcus wasn't studying criminal psychology. He was perfecting it, creating a systematic method for turning independent women into psychologically broken slaves. And he had been documenting every step of the process for replication. The police were almost at the house, but Marcus was moving toward her with the focused intensity of a predator who had nothing left to lose. Elena burst through her front door just as 2 police cruisers pulled into the driveway. Behind her, she could hear Marcus calmly explaining to the arriving officers that his wife was having a psychotic episode and needed psychiatric intervention. Officer Janet Rodriguez, the first responder, looked between Elena's bloodied face and Marcus' composed demeanor with the practiced eye of someone who had seen domestic violence disguised as mental health crisis before. "Ma'am, are you injured?" Rodriguez asked, gently guiding Elena away from Marcus. "He's been poisoning my coffee for months. He's part of a network that experiments on women. There's evidence at 1247 Oak Street, and Lisa Chun is buried there." Elena's words tumbled out rapidly, aware that she sounded exactly like the unstable wife Marcus was portraying her as. "Sir, step back, please," Rodriguez instructed Marcus, who was moving closer with his hands raised in a gesture of peaceful concern. "Officer, my wife is a forensic psychologist who's been under tremendous stress. She's been having paranoid delusions for weeks. I've been trying to get her professional help." Marcus pulled out his phone. "I have documented evidence of her declining mental state." Rodriguez's partner, Officer Kim, was already examining the scene, noting the overturned furniture in the hallway, the phone on the floor, and the small drops of blood leading from the kitchen. "What's at 1247 Oak Street?" Rodriguez asked Elena. "Evidence of his previous victims. A woman texted me the address. Lisa Chun. She was his girlfriend before me. He said she made it to stage 3 before becoming problematic." Rodriguez radioed for additional units to check the Oak Street address while keeping her attention divided between Elena and Marcus. "Stage 3, Rodriguez prompted. It's a psychological conditioning program. They break down women systematically, isolation, reality distortion, then final personality erasure. He's been documenting everything, treating me like a lab rat. Elena wiped blood from her mouth. Check his tablet. He has spreadsheets tracking my responses to psychological manipulation. Marcus laughed softly. Officer, this is exactly what I mean. She's taking her professional knowledge and creating elaborate conspiracy theories. I've been genuinely worried about her mental health. Rodriguez's radio crackled. Unit 47 to control. We're at 1247 Oak Street. This address doesn't exist. The street ends at 1245. Elena's heart sank. The mysterious texter had given her false information, or worse, had been Marcus himself, setting her up to look even more delusional when the police investigated. Marcus looked at Elena with what appeared to be genuine pity. Elena, honey, this is what I've been trying to tell you. These paranoid thoughts aren't real, but Officer Kim had found something. He emerged from the house holding Marcus's tablet, already powered on and displaying the spreadsheet Elena had mentioned. Sir, can you explain this document titled Subject 7, Elena Vasquez, Behavioral Response Tracking? Kim showed the screen to Rodriguez. Marcus's expression flickered for just a moment before returning to concerned husband mode. I've been trying to track Elena's symptoms to help her doctors understand the progression of her condition. Rodriguez studied the spreadsheet more carefully. The columns included entries like isolation success rate, reality distortion response, and dependency indicators. This wasn't medical documentation, it was experimental data. And this section labeled Previous Subjects 1 to 6, Rodriguez asked. Elena felt vindicated and terrified simultaneously. There had been at least 6 other women before her, all subjected to the same systematic psychological destruction. Marcus's calm facade finally cracked. I want to speak to my lawyer. Sir, you're not under arrest yet, but I think we need to have a longer conversation about this information. Rodriguez called for Detective Sarah Martinez, whom Elena recognized from her forensic consulting work. 20 minutes later, Detective Martinez arrived and immediately took control of the scene. She had worked with Elena on several cases and knew her professional reputation. Elena, talk to me. What's really going on here? Elena explained everything: the poisoning, the psychological manipulation, the systematic conditioning program, the network of collaborators including corrupt medical professionals. As she spoke, Martinez took detailed notes and photographed the evidence on Marcus's tablet. Martinez, the texter who warned me about Dr. Reeves, can you trace that number? Already working on it. Martinez showed Elena her phone. But there's something else. We ran Marcus Vasquez through our database. He's been questioned in connection with 3 missing women cases over the past 5 years, but never charged due to lack of evidence. Elena felt sick. She wasn't just a victim. She had been living with and loving a serial predator who had perfected his methods through years of practice. The women who survived, Elena said. The ones who made it through his program. Where are they? Martinez and Rodriguez exchanged glances. That's what we need to find out. But first, we need to get you checked out medically and document everything he's done to you." As paramedics examined Elena's injuries and drew blood to test for toxins, Marcus sat in the back of a patrol car, no longer pretending to be a concerned husband. Elena could see him through the window, and his expression was pure calculation, already planning his defense, already thinking about how to manipulate the system to his advantage. "Elena," Martinez said quietly, "I need you to be prepared for what we might find as we dig deeper into this. If Marcus is part of an organized network, there could be dozens of victims, and some of them might still be alive, trapped in his system." Elena thought about the women who had been psychologically broken, their personalities erased and replaced with programmed compliance. They might be living as prisoners in their own minds, unaware that they had ever been different, conditioned to believe their captivity was normal. "We have to find them," Elena said. "We will. But I need you to understand that you're probably going to be the key witness in a case that's much bigger than just your husband. Are you prepared for that?" Elena looked at the house where she had lived for 2 years, where she had been slowly poisoned and psychologically tortured by the man she trusted most. Then she thought about Lisa Chun and the other women who hadn't been strong enough or lucky enough to escape Marcus's program. "I'm prepared," she said. But even as she spoke the words, Elena knew that Marcus's network wouldn't let her testify without a fight. She had exposed their methodology, their systematic approach to creating human slaves through psychological manipulation. They would do whatever it took to silence her, and Marcus's arrest was probably just the beginning of a much more dangerous game. Martinez seemed to read her thoughts. "Elena, you're going into protective custody until we can map out this entire operation. These people won't stop with Marcus's arrest." As Elena was driven away from her former home, she saw Marcus watching her from the patrol car window. He wasn't angry or defeated. He was studying her, still gathering data, still treating her like an experiment even as his world collapsed around him. She realized that in Marcus's mind, her escape wasn't a failure of his program. It was just another data point in his research into human psychology and the breaking points of the human spirit. Elena had been in protective custody for 3 days when Detective Martinez brought her the news that would change everything. The investigation into Marcus's network had uncovered something far more horrifying than anyone had anticipated. "Elena, we found them." The other women. Martinez sat across from Elena in the safe house, her expression grave. "Some of them are alive, but they're not. They're not themselves anymore." Elena had been dreading this moment since her escape. She knew Marcus's psychological conditioning program was designed to erase personalities and create compliant victims. But hearing it confirmed made her physically ill. How many? 14 women over 8 years. 6 are confirmed dead, including Lisa Chen. 8 are alive but living in various locations across 3 states. All under assumed identities, all completely dependent on their handlers. Martinez opened a file folder. "Elena, they don't remember who they used to be. The conditioning worked exactly as Marcus intended." Elena stared at the photographs of women who looked hollow-eyed and vacant, their original personalities completely erased and replaced with programmed responses. These weren't just victims, they were living proof of what happened when Marcus's experiment succeeded. "There's more," Martinez continued. "Dr. Reeves, the psychiatrist Marcus wanted you to see, was part of the network. He's been providing documentation to support the psychological conditioning, helping to convince families that their missing loved ones had chosen to disappear." Elena felt the full scope of the conspiracy beginning to reveal itself. This wasn't just Marcus conducting private experiments. It was an organized operation with medical professionals, legal documentation, and systematic methods for making women disappear without triggering missing person investigations. How does it work? They target women who are isolated, recently divorced, new to an area, women who won't be immediately missed. They use romantic relationships to gain trust, then begin systematic psychological conditioning. Stage 1 is isolation from support networks. Stage 2 is reality distortion through drugs and gaslighting. Stage 3 is personality erasure and replacement with programmed compliance. Elena realized she had been incredibly lucky. Her professional training in forensic psychology had helped her recognize the manipulation patterns before reaching stage 3. But most victims wouldn't have that advantage. What about prosecution? Martinez's expression darkened. That's the problem. Marcus is claiming everything was consensual research, that you're a willing participant who suffered a psychological break. Dr. Reeves is backing up his story, and the surviving victims can't testify about coercion because they don't remember being coerced. Elena felt her blood run cold. He's going to get away with it. Not if we can prove the systematic nature of the operation. But we need evidence of the network's coordination, documentation of their methods, something that shows this was organized criminal activity rather than isolated incidents. Elena thought about Marcus's tablet, about the spreadsheets tracking multiple subjects, the research data. He was documenting everything, treating it like a scientific study. We have his local files, but we think the main database is stored remotely, probably accessible to other members of the network. Martinez leaned forward. Elena, we need you to help us get access to that database. How? Marcus has been requesting to see you. He claims he's worried about your mental health and wants to apologize. We think he's actually trying to assess how much damage you've done to their operation. Martinez paused. If you're willing, we could wire you up and let him think he's manipulating you one more time. Elena felt sick at the thought of facing Marcus again, but she also knew it might be the only way to save the women who were still trapped in his system. What would I have to do? Convince him that his conditioning is working, that you're starting to doubt your own memories and perceptions. Make him think he can still salvage you as a subject. Martinez's voice was gentle but urgent. Elena, I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. If he realizes what you're doing, he might become violent. Elena thought about the 8 women whose personalities had been completely erased, who were living as prisoners in their own minds. She thought about Lisa Chun and the other women who had died rather than submit to psychological slavery. I'll do it. 2 days later, Elena sat across from Marcus in a secured interview room, wearing a wire and trying to project the confused vulnerability he would expect from a successful conditioning subject. Marcus smiled when he saw her, the same charming expression that had fooled her for so long. "Elena, I've been so worried about you. Are you feeling better?" Elena kept her voice uncertain, fragile. "I don't know. The doctors say I've been having delusions, but everything felt so real. That's what I've been trying to tell everyone. You've been under tremendous stress, and your mind created these elaborate conspiracy theories to cope with the pressure." Marcus reached across the table as if to comfort her. "But I want you to know that I forgive you for the accusations. I understand you weren't yourself." Elena forced herself not to pull away from his touch. "Marcus, I'm scared. I can't tell what's real anymore. That's completely normal after a psychological break. But the good news is that we can work together to restore your sense of reality. I've been researching treatment methods that can help you distinguish between actual memories and false ones." Elena recognized the setup. Marcus was offering to continue his conditioning program under the guise of therapy. What kind of treatment? "It's called reality reconstruction therapy. We go through your recent memories together and identify which ones are distorted by paranoid thinking. Gradually, your mind learns to trust reliable sources instead of your own confused perceptions." Elena felt sick hearing him describe the final stage of his conditioning program. This was how he had erased the personalities of 8 other women, by convincing them their own memories and instincts were unreliable, gradually replacing their authentic thoughts with his programmed responses. "Would you help me with that?" Elena asked, hating every word. Marcus's eyes lit up with predatory satisfaction. "Of course. In fact, I have access to some advanced research data that could accelerate your recovery. Treatment protocols that have been very successful with other patients who had similar psychological breaks." "Other patients?" Marcus caught himself, realizing he had revealed too much. But Elena pressed gently, maintaining her vulnerable persona. "It would help me to know I am not the only one who has experienced this kind of confusion." Marcus studied her face carefully, and Elena knew he was deciding whether to trust her with information about his network. Finally, his arrogance won out over his caution. "There have been several cases similar to yours. Women who developed paranoid delusions about their partners, who created elaborate conspiracy theories to explain normal relationship dynamics. But with proper treatment, they all learned to distinguish between reality and their psychological projections." Elena nodded eagerly, as if this explanation was helping her make sense of her experience. "Can I read about these other cases? It might help me understand what happened to me." Marcus smiled with genuine warmth for the first time since she'd known him. Not because he loved her, but because he thought his conditioning program was finally working. "I think that's an excellent idea. Let me show you some research files that document the treatment process." As Marcus began explaining his systematic method for psychological conditioning, describing it as therapy while detailing how he had destroyed the minds of multiple women, Elena felt the wire recording every word. For the first time since her ordeal began, she knew that Marcus and his network were finally going to face justice. But she also knew that 8 women were still living as psychological prisoners, and even with Marcus arrested, deprogramming victims of such systematic conditioning might be impossible. The evil he had created would continue to exist in the broken minds of his survivors, a testament to the terrifying truth about how easily human psychology could be manipulated and destroyed. As Elena walked out of the interview room with enough recorded evidence to convict Marcus and his collaborators, she made a decision that would define the rest of her life. She would dedicate her career to understanding and reversing the psychological damage caused by predators like her husband, fighting to restore the identities that monsters had stolen. Because the most horrifying truth about evil wasn't that it existed. It was that it could be perfected, systematized, and replicated. And the only way to stop it was to understand it completely, no matter how much that understanding cost. If this psychological thriller opened your eyes to the terrifying reality of systematic psychological manipulation, you need to subscribe now for more stories that expose the dark side of human nature. Share this with everyone you know. These predatory techniques are being used right now, and awareness could save lives. Comment below if you've ever experienced psychological manipulation or gaslighting. And remember, your instincts are valid, your memories are real, and you deserve to be believed. Hit that notification bell because understanding the psychology of evil might be the most important education you ever receive.